Rev it up and welcome to Cars Yeah, show number 2192. Be prepared to be inspired.
This is Cars Yeah, where you'll enjoy interviews with inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Mark Green is here to provide you with a fuel injection of automotive inspiration. So get in, sit down, buckle up, and get ready for a wild ride here on Cars Yeah.
Hello, inspiring automotive enthusiasts, and welcome to Cars Yeah. Today I'm in beautiful Burbank, California, with a very special returning guest by the name of Preston Lerner. Preston, welcome back to Cars Yeah. Do you have any gear, and are you ready to release the clutch?
I absolutely am. Mark, thanks for having me back. It's a pleasure to be here again.
Yeah, a lot has changed in the world since 2016 when you were a guest on the show. Wow, well over 1,000 guests before, and boy, has a lot changed. But one thing I didn't ask you last time you were on the show before I give you an introduction here is this. What's one little thing that maybe most people don't know about Preston Lerner?
Probably a lot of things they don't know about me, but let's see. I'm an aspiring musician,
cool.
Jazz pianist of no particular special ability, but I love music. I can't imagine living without it. It's one of the things I really enjoy doing.
Jazz piano, well, that's cool. I grew up playing the guitar. I actually taught guitar during high school in the summers to little kids, because when I learned how to play, my mom insisted I learn from kind of a master musician where you had to learn scales and read music and write music and all that. And at the time, I really didn't like it. I just wanted to learn how to play a rock song, Mom. But it taught me a lot of great things. But I always wanted to play the piano, and I never really got into it. I can sit down and, do a couple chords and things, but I guess I have to practice, right?
Yeah, the funny thing is I took classical piano when I was a kid till I was about 16, and then I played rock guitar for many years.
There you go.
Classic rock.
Yeah.
But then I inherited my parents' piano and didn't really enjoy rock piano, and ended up taking up becoming a jazz snob, and now that's all I listen to and all I play. The guitar, actually, especially playing rock music, you really didn't need to know music theory and scales and modes and those things, and I had to sort of learn all that stuff. And without practice, you really can't do anything at least for me. I couldn't just do it all by ear. I had to really drill and practice, spend hours at the piano learning stuff.
Music is awesome. Yeah, it's a wonderful thing. Well, let me give you a proper introduction because, listeners, we got Preston back today because there's a new book that he's authored that is very cool. We're going to talk about that, so here we go. Preston Lerner has been writing about motorsports since the Dallas Grand Prix back in 1984 and covered a variety of other subjects for magazines ranging from Wired to the New York Times Magazine. A longtime contributor to Automobile Magazine and Road and Track, he now writes mostly for Haggerty's print and online publications. He's the author of 7 books, from a marked history of the All-American Scarabs, there's a cool car, to a blow-by-blow account of the Le Mans winning Ford GTs. And this latest book, Shelby American, the renegade who built the cars, won the races, and lived the legend, reexamines the mythology surrounding Carroll Shelby and his Cobra-based empire. We'll be back in just a moment, but first a word from our sponsors, so give them a little listen, and we'll be right back. Buckle up. Autumn has arrived, the weather's changing, and that means your vehicles need extra protection against everything Mother Nature can drop. Covercraft offers you a multitude of layers of protection for your special rides. Are you putting your summer toys away, watercraft, RV, motorcycles, trailers, or even your patio furniture? Covercraft has a custom fit cover for whatever your need. Covercraft offers you 10 different car cover options. That's right, 10 for your special vehicle's protection, whether stored inside or out. All carefully crafted into the form and fit with the quality and attention to detail that's been their standard since 1965. And don't forget their custom fit seat covers, pet pad, Fido's going to get wet and muddy, I guarantee it, dash mats, sunscreens, and custom fit floor mats and trunk mats. Whatever the surface you want to protect, Covercraft has your solution. If you use the code YEAH21 at covercraft.com, you'll get 10% off your Covercraft order. That's right, 10% off. Simply use the code YEAH21 at checkout. Come on, Mother Nature, bring it on. Covercraft, protecting the things that move you. Most people don't think about their collector car insurance until their annual premium becomes due. Well, why wait and see if there are better options for your beloved rides? I didn't. Did you know if you change carriers before your policy runs out, your insurance company has to refund you the unearned portion of your policy premium? I did my homework, I shopped around, and I found American Collectors Insurance. They've been protecting collector vehicles since 1976. I encourage you to call my friends at American Collectors Insurance. Ask them about their agreed value policy. And if your collector vehicle is on your regular auto policy, you will be shocked at the savings, not to mention the assurance, should something bad happen to your ride, that you'll get what your vehicle is actually worth. Give them a call today for a quote at 866-ACI-YEAH. That's 866-224-9324. Tell them you're a friend of Mark Green at Cars Yeah! American Collectors Insurance. Classic car insurance designed by collectors for collectors. Automotive enthusiasts just like you and me. That's American Collectors Insurance. Give them a call today. So, Preston, as I said, a lot has changed in the world. However, this passion and love for Carroll Shelby and what he created still remains. And when I got this book from our friends at Octane Press, I went, okay, another Shelby book. What on earth can we learn that we don't already know? But you've covered a lot of interesting things. This is the 60th anniversary of Shelby American. And one of the things I learned was, that company really was only around for like less than 10 years, right?
Actually, yeah, it was formed in 62, and it technically folded in 67, or ceased to exist in 67, although Shelby continued to race under Shelby Racing for another 2 years or so after that. But yeah, it's a pretty short run, and it's amazing what they accomplished in that short period of time.
Well, it is. You kind of think about, let's say the Beatles. They were really not around together for that long, but you thought they were together forever because their music endured, and that's what Shelby's contributions to racing and cars, especially of course, the Shelby Cobras and so forth. So, and not only Carroll Shelby, but there are some interesting characters working with this guy. I'll name just a few: Phil Remington, Ken Miles, Pete Brock, who's still with us, Carroll Smith. So let's start by talking a bit about how you dove into this book, how it all came to be, why you decided to write a book about Shelby American. And then as we go through our talk today, we're going to kind of be twisting my questions up, all focused on what you've learned with the book. So let's go back to the beginning. Why write the book?
Well, 2022 is the 60th anniversary of the creation of the Cobra. And to be honest, I got an assignment from Haggerty to do a piece late last year about the upcoming 60th anniversary. And in doing the research, I realized that, as you say, there's been a ton of stuff already written about Shelby and Shelby American. It was covered, very, very closely back in the day at the time, and it's been written about by dozens of authors ever since. But I also found in doing the research there's a lot of stories that haven't been told, or at least haven't been widely disseminated. And, we all know Shelby, and some people know Phil Remington and Ken Miles, but there were hundreds of other people who were involved in building and racing the cars, and I wanted to tell some of their stories as well, and this gave me an opportunity to do that.
So as you dove into this book, I always ask about mentors and influencers and so forth. Who were some of the people that really inspired you as you started to kind of peel back the onion even more, the giant Shelby onion, if you will? Who are some of the people that really inspired you, and maybe tell a few stories you learned about them? Well,
I mean, to me, the book that, the best book about this era, and perhaps the best book ever written about American racing, is The Dust and the Glory, the Leo Levine book. Leo died actually last year, unfortunately. And I was really inspired to do something similar to what he did, which was to tell the backstory behind all the lore that we all know so well. We all know, the Fords won Le Mans 1, 2, 3 in 1966, and that was obviously covered in Ford v Ferrari, with the centerpiece of that movie. But there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes that most people don't know, and so I really wanted to sort of delve into some of that material. And these were a lot of heroes. The guys who did this work, they were some of the most important figures in American racing of the post-war era, and I just was inspired to kind of tell their stories just because some of them hadn't been told in detail before, and I just wanted people to know, there was more than Carroll Shelby and Ken Miles. There were mechanics and fabricators and truck drivers and just a whole slew of hundreds of people that were necessary to make this program into a winning program.
Who are some of the guys that are still with, obviously Pete Brock's still with us. Who are some of the guys that are still with us that you got to actually talk with?
Yeah, that's one of the unfortunate things is when you have something that's 60 years old, that means people are a minimum of 80 years old or 90, and so a lot of them are gone. And I was fortunate in that I interviewed a lot of the major players back in the day when they were still alive. Although I didn't know I was interviewing them for this book at the time. But
I see.
I had transcripts from the interviews back then. But someone like Chuck Cantwell. Chuck ran the Mustang programs and the GT350 and the Trans Am programs, and Chuck is still around. Ron Butler and Charlie Agapiu were two of the lead mechanics. Charlie was at the Le Mans during the winning years of 66, 67, and Ron Butler worked for Shelby all the way up until the shop closed down in 69. Dave Jordan drove the Toyota 2000 GTs. Most people don't even know that Shelby ran 2000 GTs. He was the first team to run the Toyotas here in the United States, and he's still around. I mean, so there were still people around, and some of them didn't remember things as well as they might, but some had really vivid memories of what happened back in 62, 63, 65, whatever. And it was fascinating just to hear them tell their stories, and also to see how they sometimes diverged from the mythology that we were all familiar with.
Of course. The bigger-than-life Carroll Shelby. And as you wrote the book, obviously Carroll Shelby played a major role. However, is he the key standout in your book still to this day, or is it really this culmination of all these different people?
Well, I do think look, Shelby, without Shelby, there's none of this happened. I mean, it is Shelby American for a reason. And he made it happen, and it never would have happened without him. And I don't think anyone else could have done what he did. I mean, he basically started with nothing. He had no money. He had no chassis. He had no engines. He didn't even it's unclear whether he had the name or not. Some people say he came up with the name before he came up with the car, actually, but a Cobra name, that is. And without without his vision and his salesmanship and his personal charisma and his business acumen, I mean, none of this happened. So I think that's really the most important thing to understand. That being said, Shelby was not a designer. He was not an engineer. He was not a mechanic. I mean, he didn't do anything hands-on. He didn't race the cars ever, although he'd only retired about 2 years before building them. So, he had to hire a bunch of people, and he did hire, the best and the brightest in the United States who went to work there at Shelby American. And that was also part of his genius. He knew how to find the right people for the right job, and he let them alone, and he let them do what they did, and they did it, and he made sure they weren't bothered. He made sure they had the money they needed and the time. And so without Shelby, none of this exists, but there were also a lot of other people who deserve some of the credit for what happened.
Would you say he's, in essence, the master marketer or manager or boss? Or, I mean, do you think about what you just said and how he pulled this whole thing off and continued to throughout his life? He just kept coming up with things. And was his charisma, his enthusiasm, what would you say it was about him that inspired all these wonderful people to come to him and work with him and be so excited about it?
Well, I mean, Shelby was a virtuoso salesman. I mean, the quote from his first wife is that he could sell white blackbirds. I mean, he was he was really had a remarkable ability to sell things, and what he was really selling most of all, and which was his strongest product, was himself. I mean, he was a brilliant man personally, and he just had so much charisma that people wanted to be around him. They wanted to be friends with him. And I mean, I met him on several occasions. I was not a friend of his, but it's just amazing just how he would he remembered you, and he knew how to flatter you. And even. Mm-hmm. I was like a young, not very important journalist, and he would even go to the trouble of flattering me, So his personality was just so winning that I think you can't underestimate the value of his personality. And he charmed Lee Iacocca, and Don Fry at Ford, and that's how they ended up getting Ford engines. And so I do think, marketing was also, he understood marketing, but he wasn't really, later he did a lot more of that, and, he did a lot more street cars. But, again, early on, he was doing Cobras, and really racing was his thing early on. And then getting into production cars was sort of a different, kind of a secondary career, I think. But I think fundamentally he was really more interested in racing, especially in the early days.
How to win friends and influence people.
There you go.
If he should have written that book instead of the other guy, but he just had a way about him, a quite amazing character. I also like to ask a bit about challenges, and in the case of authoring a book like this, especially a book about a guy that's been written and told so many stories about, what was some of the big challenges you faced in putting this book together?
Well, as you say, the hardest thing was making sure I just didn't repeat the same information. I just didn't want to rehash the material that everyone's seen before. And so I wanted to get some fresh material in there, and that's why I ended up talking to basically everyone who was everyone who's still around. There was several dozen, I don't know, 3 dozen or so people who I was able to talk to. But also, I need to give a shout out to the Shelby American Automobile Club. They put out a quarterly magazine, and they have since the 1980s, where they would do Q&As with various players in the Shelby universe, and they were just they were transcribed interviews. Rick Kopech of the club was kind enough to let me use that material, so I had some for people who were no longer around, like Carroll Smith, Bill Eaton, or somebody like that. I mean, these guys aren't here anymore. And also Dave Friedman did the same thing, the photographer Dave Friedman, and author. And so I was able to use this material. So I wasn't able to talk to these people personally, but it's almost as if I had talked to them and get their stories again and get them out there and sort of give a larger, kind of a better perspective on the bigger picture of what went into building the cars and racing the cars and putting them into production. Because again, sometimes it seems sort of magical. You just hear, oh, the car was built and the car appeared and the car won the race. And you don't really realize all the thousands of hours that went into work into making that all happen.
Oh, absolutely. Now, here's a little bit of a twist of a question here. If you could bring back anybody as part of that team, except for Carroll, because that's the obvious answer here, to sit down and spend time talking with them, from what you've learned in putting this book together and what you've learned about Shelby American, who's one person that you really would have loved to have been able to sit down that we don't have with us anymore?
Well, to me, the most important person was Phil Remington. He was really the backbone of that company from the very start. But it happens that I actually I was able to sit down with Rem on several occasions, and so I had some really good material from him. I mean, would love to have gone back again because there were things I didn't talk about that had I known at the time, I would have asked him about. But the person I never got a chance to talk to ever was Ken Miles. He was killed in 1966. And Ken wasn't there at the very beginning, but he was there early on, and he was a confidant of Shelby's in a way that very few other people, I think, in the company were. And he's the person I think I would have liked to have spoken to most to really get some insight into what happened there in the early days of the company. And especially between 63 and 66, it changed so fundamentally from a small kind of artisanal shop in Venice, 8,000 square foot, and then they moved to LAX, and they had 84,000 square feet and a company with 250 people. So he was there during that transition. I would have loved to have just talked to him about that, and also to get his take on what really happened in Le Mans in 1966.
Yeah, exactly. What do you think it was about Ken Miles, Carroll Shelby, that relationship that worked so well? Because the movie, of course, is the movie. Hollywood, they have to do things with movies to make them, I don't know, more watchable or whatever you might say. But knowing what you know about those characters now, what would you say it was about Ken Miles that Carroll really loved?
Well, one thing that I think is kind of interesting is the 4 guys who are the most important guys are Shelby, Remington, Ken Miles, and Al Dowd, who was a former Coast Guard warrant officer who was hired. He essentially became a team manager. He kind of made the trains run on time, and then he kind of ran things behind the scenes. But all 4 of them were of an age. They were all in their 40s. They'd all of them. Shelby and 3 of them. I don't know about Al. I think I was a little bit younger, but the first 3 had served during World War II. I mean, Shelby was a instructor pilot who never left the States, but he was in the Army Air Corps. Ken Miles was a tank mechanic who was in France after D-Day, and Phil Remington flew he was a flight engineer in a B-24 in the Pacific. So I think the 3 of them were of an age, and they grew up in the Depression. I just think they kind of were very simpatico kind of personally, and they weren't necessarily close friends exactly, but I think they had similar sensibilities, and I think they were hardworking, and they understood what they needed to do. And I think that's really was critical to, beneath them were all these 20-year-old mechanics.
Yeah.
doing all the work. But these were the guys who, they'd kind of been through the wars literally. And I think they just sort of saw eye to eye, and they kind of had a way about them that made them kind of fit together pretty well.
It's pretty amazing when you think back. These guys all were in World War II. What a different time that was for the world. And for people and characters. And you're right. It was a different time, different characters, and how they went through that together and then came forward to rebuild or build this team together. It's pretty phenomenal compared to you think of life today and things and how they are today and how it was more simple. I don't know if I want the right word here, maybe more noble in some way, or it experienced life in a whole different way.
I think certainly. I mean, having gone through that experience would have made them different. I mean, things that we wouldn't consider acceptable. And people died in racing in those days. Well, Ken Miles, of course, got killed.
Yeah.
That's not acceptable these days. I mean, then it was just part of the course. I mean, not that people look forward to it, but they accepted it. And, a couple of guys would die every year, and life went on. But I think, coming out of World War II, maybe you had a different attitude about a certain fatalism.
I survived that. I could survive anything.
Right. So I think that had something to do with it, no question.
So, looking forward, is there another book on the horizon for you?
I was happy to get this one done. This was a tough one. I kind of misunderestimated, as one of our former presidents once said, how much work was involved. We were Octane and Lee Clancher at Octane really wanted to make sure we got this book out this year, for the 60th anniversary. And since we didn't pull the trigger on doing the project till the beginning of the year, that meant everything had to be done very, very quickly.
That's really quick. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like it was kind of funny because it was a little bit like race cars are always a thrash to get them finished. The last night is always an all-nighter, and I kind of felt like this project was sort of like a race car project, except it seemed like there were about 50 all-nighters.
Oh my gosh!
To get it done. But anyway, I was after. I'm not right now. I'm not. I'm doing magazine stories like usual. I haven't undertaken another book project yet.
Yeah, well, I think there may be another in the future, but I'm sure glad you did this one. And for you listeners, this is a great book to add in your holiday shopping. I always say books are a wonderful gift to give to your friends, your car buddies who are impossible to buy for because they all want impossible stuff, is to get them a book like this. And even if they're not collectors of books, they can read it and pass it on to their friends, and it can keep on going. And thank goodness there's still books being printed these days versus everything online. It's nice to sit down with a book, something in your hands. Very cool. So let's talk about a special vehicle. Now, I typically ask my guests, and I did last time you were on the show, to pick a special vehicle in your past. Instead, I'm going to have you pick a car that is around the Shelby American team. Now, that doesn't mean a lot of different cars, Cobras, GT40s perhaps, maybe a couple others. But if you could pick one car that Shelby's life was wrapped around and take that for a fun ride, or maybe I just park in your garage and give it to you because I'm feeling pretty good these days. What car really stands out for you? What would we put Preston into?
Well, my favorite car from this whole year is the Ford GT Mark IV, which is the car that won Le Mans '67 with A.J. Foyt and Ken Gurney. But that wasn't really a Shelby's car. It was developed by Carcraft and Ford. And he raced the car. The Shelby American was they entered the car and they prepped it. But I would have to be a Cobra. The Cobra Daytona Coupe is probably it's definitely the most famous and valuable of the Cobras. But that was really more of Peter Brock's car. So I would just say the first, and the 427 Cobra is now people think of a Cobra, they all think of a 427. Right. But they were actually very unsuccessful in the day. Nobody wanted them, frankly, when they were being built. The car that really established the mystique was the original 289 Cobra, and I'd want one of those. A nice, I think one of the FIA Cobras would be one of the race car Cobras. That's the car I think that was closest to Shelby's heart, and that's the one that really embodies, the whole Cobra mystique for me.
Yeah, I like those too, and I think it has to do with they really go back to the AC, or they look like a little Seata, or they just have more of a European versus the bigger cars with big bulging fenders, which are great. They're cool, but yeah, this is a little bit more European for me. It's a 289.
I agree with that.
Yeah, beautiful cars. So I didn't ask you this question, I don't think, but I am going to ask you today to see how you feel about this. If you were reincarnated, manifest as a vehicle, and this isn't what you want to be, you got to dig deep for me here, Preston. This is how you perceive the man in the mirror. Okay, a little bit of psychology going on here. What would you be? But the most important part of this is the why.
Oh, so any car I want to be, I could be a car? Well,
it's not what you want to be. This is a key thing here. This is how you perceive your personality manifest. It's not that easy because we all want to be something sexy and fast, right? But yeah, this is more about, okay, who am I? The kind of guy, how I go about things, my mythology. Now, some people are a plain old Ford F-150 or Range Rover, but I've had some F1 people think they're F1 cars too. So we'll see where we go with this.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, being a sport utility vehicle, this could be unfortunate. This could be kind of depressing. Let me see. I gotta think. I don't know, some sort of sports car, but clearly not a Ferrari.
Okay. We can narrow it down this way: European or U.S. or Japanese.
I gotta go European. Well, I don't know. I had a bunch of Japanese cars. I don't know. A car. Actually, I like the. Here's one. How about the a third gen RX-7? the FD.
Okay.
Twin turbo.
Yeah.
Although, frankly, that's a lot more high maintenance than I am. I'm not really a high maintenance guy. So.
Maybe the first gen RX-7.
I had a first gen, I had a second gen, and I didn't buy the third gen because I knew I would have blown it up. And so,
okay.
Kind of the, so I don't know. Maybe I was second gen RX-7. I don't.
Okay.
Maybe that's more me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. What car are you? What car are you, Mark?
Oh, you're gonna flip it on me here. Thanks a lot. I've been asked this question, and I kind of go back to the Porsche 911, and the reason for that is I'm a big fan of those. However, I look at the Porsche 911 as it's a fun car. I hope I'm a fun person, but it's not super flashy. It never really has been. It just kind of gets out there, gets things done, keeps on going. I feel like I'm a pretty tenacious guy. I don't know anybody who's interviewed 2,192 people, 5 a week for 8.5 years. That's kind of crazy bulldog attitude. And the 911 is that way, both in racing and the street. Pretty reliable and just keeps on going. So yeah, I guess I'll kind of stick to the 911s.
Damn, I should have picked the 911. I think that's a better choice.
Well, you got to look in the mirror sometimes, that's the key. But, I'm not a GT2 or GT3 RS or anything sleek or fancy like that or turbo. Just kind of your basic 911, maybe going back to the SCs or even the long hoods. I had a 72S that was I probably wouldn't be an S. I'd probably just be a T, kind of just get out there and do it and keep going. But kind of the way I look at myself. But thanks for flipping the mic on me a little bit there. Nice trick. One thing I wanted to touch on is I mentioned in your intro, you're doing a lot of riding for Hagerty. And I wanted to talk maybe a little bit about some of the different things you're doing for them.
Well, the Hagerty, I think McKeel Hagerty is trying to create world domination.
Seems to be, yeah.
Yeah, so many great things that he's done with that company. So Hagerty has, they have got 2 print publications. They have the Drivers Club, which is a great magazine run by Larry Webster, and they also have a limited edition magazine called Radius. And they have the website, which is really spectacular, and they also have now 2 secondary websites. They have Insider, which is run by David Zenley. I mean, the website is run by Eric Weiner, and David Zenley runs the Insider website. And Cameron Nouveau has just started a new Motorsites website, and I don't know what else. They're also they do video with Jason Camisa and a whole bunch of stuff. So it's really incredible what the brand has been extended to. But I'm doing kind of the same sort of stories that I used to write for Automobile and Road and Track, but I'm just now doing it for Hagerty. So, I'm actually doing a bi-weekly column on motorsports. Did a piece on Connie Nyholm, who co-owns VIR Raceway, and doing a piece on a Delahaye Type 135M. I'm working on right now. Actually, was just doing an interview just before speaking with you about that. So, getting to do a whole variety of really interesting things.
Yeah, boy, the magazine world has sure changed. I just had 2 weeks ago, I believe it was, Mike Guy, who's running Road and Track now, and talked at length about how different that publication has had to become in all publications, and how magazines have changed so much to these large format publications. Some of them are more in-depth stories, some of them are shorter stories, but everything's certainly changed a lot. And for guys like you and I have been around for a while, there's kind of a renaissance going on, which kind of leads me to a question about your opinions and thoughts on electric vehicles.
Well, in principle and in reality, I'm in favor of electric vehicles. I remember I did a story on J.B. Straubel, who was the CTO at Tesla before the Roadster actually came out, which was the first of the Teslas. And I think at Automobile did, I believe, the first story on the first formal road test of the Tesla Roadster. For me, the issue is, we need to have, for the cars to really, they need to percolate down to the masses. Right now they're just expensive cars for the most part.
Right.
The Teslas are just too pricey, and they've gotten they've got the tax credits, which have obviously helped. And Tesla as a brand has managed to get a lot of sort of fanboys who really love the product, sort of regardless of how good it is or what its shortcomings may be. But we're going to need to, for EVs to really, to get enough penetration in the market, they need to be less expensive. That's just all there is to it. So I'm waiting. My girlfriend's looking for EVs right now, and she wants like an SUV, but we're looking at minimum around $40,000 or so. I mean, that's a pretty high bar to entry, I think.
Well, and if you're going to finance it, all of a sudden, guess what's happened to car interest
Right.
rates? Holy mackerel. I was just looking at some people this morning. A guy was asking, hey, I'm looking to buy a new, and he was looking at a Porsche. What kind of rates are you paying through Porsche finance? And 8.9%, 9%.
Oh my
I'm like, well, wrong time to buy a car. That's for sure, unless you're a cash buyer. And even if you're a cash buyer, try to find one. I mean, my local Porsche dealership, I was down there a couple weeks ago asking them, they said, we haven't had a new car in here that we could sell anybody for 2.5 years, except for maybe Cayennes and Macans, but I'm talking about 911s or 718s or something like that. So yeah, it's a weird time. It's a very weird renaissance time, quite actually, because I've had a lot of guests on the show here who are building EVs, all different companies. I mean, and even taking old classic cars and putting electric motors in them. And yeah, I think it's one of the most unique times I've ever seen when it comes to the automotive world. Would you feel the same way?
No, yeah. Well, I remember when the Tesla Model S came out, that was the automobile of the year. I remember automobile used to do a thing like, Car and Driver and Motor Trend, and where they do it, they take all the new cars and they drive them all together and then pick a winner. And it was the hands down winner. I mean, it was the only problem was it was $100,000 car. So
yeah.
I mean, if you're $100,000, you've got a certain, you're expected to be, have a certain level of quality, which it did. But yeah, it's interesting. It's a fascinating time in cars. I mean, I have a pickup truck getting 18 miles to the gallon, so I hate to go anywhere these days. I mean,
well, you're in California. Holy cow. You guys are just getting walloped. I think I filled up our SUV yesterday, and it was, I'm in the Pacific Northwest, and it was $482, I think, $484, something like that at Costco. So,
mine's more like $650.
Oh, yeah, at least, yeah. And I'm talking about premium.
Oh, yeah, this is regular. And my credit card cuts off $100. I haven't filled up my tank all the way in like about a year. So.
Yeah, it's been a tough one, that's for sure. Well, let's talk about something a little bit more fun. I do ask guests about, let me back up one step, and that is I ask about great books. And obviously today we're promoting this wonderful book by Preston Lerner and our friends at Octane, Shelby American, the Renegades who built the cars, won the races, and lived the legends. I'll put a link to it. It's very easy to get your hands on a copy of this book, and I encourage all you listeners to buy one because you're going to love this read. And again, if you're not a collector of books, read it and hand it on to your best car buddy. So there you go. So I'm going to arrange for you to go on what I call the ultimate drive. I'm going to buy you any car. I'm going to park in your garage. Yeah, this is kind of a fun deal. Could be a Shelby car, could be anything in the world, doesn't matter. But here's the key. You could take anybody that you would like with you, even somebody who has passed, somebody who's not with us anymore, which opens up a world of opportunities for a very cool drive. So what does an ultimate drive with the ultimate person look like for you, Preston?
Oh, man, Mark, this comes out of nowhere.
Well, let's break it down a couple notches here. One is the person. I mean, and again, here's the key. It could be somebody who's no longer with us, which, I mean, it could be Henry Ford. It could be Carroll Shelby, all sorts of people that would be fun to ride with.
Yeah, well, let's see. I'm a big racing fan.
Okay.
So it would have to be a racer, I guess. I've always been fascinated by the pre-war American genius Harry Miller.
Oh, wow.
Miller race cars.
Those wonderful cars, yeah. Oh, man.
I'm going to say Harry Miller.
Okay.
That?
That's
I don't know what we would talk about, considering he died before I was born. But
it'd be pretty amazing. Here's something that might help you decide in the car, because I got to spend some time around some Miller race cars, and I was just blown away. I mean, they're like little jewels. Well, big jewels. They're kind of big cars. But so Miller, and then what about jumping into something just really crazy and new and wild, and that would just kind of blow his socks off?
Let's see. Well, that's something I don't really new I'm really crazy about. Although, I mean, those Porsche, like a GT3 911 would be a pretty nice car, but I don't think I want to drive that across country. Exactly.
Yeah, maybe not. Yeah, maybe not. Probably not a Pagani or anything like that either. Might be a little rough.
He'd be amazed by a Model S, actually. Can you imagine what he would make of that?
Well, it would probably blow him away. And then the technology sitting in the cockpit and looking at the dash and seeing how interconnected to the world you can be while driving the car. Yeah, that would he'd probably wouldn't have much to say. He'd just be going, "Oh my gosh, this is incredible.
Right.
This is incredible." Yeah. But I think just the person is pretty special.
I think I'm going to go with even that. This is even worse for going cross country. I'm going to go with a Lamborghini Miura, which I've actually never been in, and I hear is terrible to drive in. But that to me is the most spectacular looking, post-war car. So that's what I'm going to go for. Lamborghini Miura with Harry Miller.
Now you're tugging on my heartstrings. I have been able to drive one, and they are just insane. I don't know about a cross country drive, but I think I could put up with it. Not super comfortable and maybe a little hot, but just spectacular car. And how could you get even any more crazy from a Miller race car to a Miura? Yeah. I mean, you'd go, what? Oh, somebody stepped on this thing. How could you build a car so low to the ground? Yeah, I think it'd be pretty cool. He probably spent all the time pulled over looking at stuff. And then when you open up the back clamshell of that car and he looked in at the engine, he'd probably just drop his jaw, right?
Right.
Yeah. And not to mention, hey, wait, it's positioned sideways. How'd you do that? Yeah, some fun stuff. Well, you've taken us on a fun ride today, Preston, and I'm so happy to brought you back here. Before I let you go, could you share maybe parting words of inspiration, a mantra, or some kind of success quote that maybe something that you live by or something that writing this great book about Shelby American taught you?
Well, I think I said something like this the last time, but I believe in it, and I know you do too. Since you've done 2,192 of these in the past 5 or 6 years, 8 years,
8.5 years, yeah, wow.
But I think there's no substitute for tenacity and persistence and just working at it. I mean, honestly, I don't know if it's 99%. Perspiration is 99% of the equation, but you don't get any. No matter how talented you are, no matter how smart you are. You don't get anywhere unless you actually put the work in. And a book that definitely teaches that. I mean, a book is like a lot of different magazine articles put together. But, it's just you have to have a longer time horizon, but you have to, because you can't get everything done in 2 days or in a week or something like that. But,
you can't cram for a book like you do for a test.
Yeah, you really can't. And but so I think just working at it and just telling yourself that you have to get up every day and just put in the hours. I mean, that's to me the most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. How can people follow along with you these days?
Well, unfortunately, I'm a dinosaur, so I have no social media presence whatsoever.
Lucky you. Sometimes I kind of live for the day that I can live like that and just give it all up, because it's just, I sit here and scream at my computer some days, and my wife said, "Don't look at that stuff. It's just upsetting you." But I understand. Well, I think the main way would be to follow you on your writings with the Haggerty Group, and also get their hands on this book, and I'll put links to the book on Preston's show notes page. But again, it's easy to find. You can just go to Google Shelby American, Preston Lerner. You can find it on the Octane Press website, or of course Amazon, or wherever you like to buy your book these days. Does that sound fair enough?
Yes, that's perfect.
Okay,
thanks, Mark.
There you go. And again, a shout out, thank you to Joe Snyder at Octane Press and my friends for bringing Preston back on. They publish some amazing books. You got to go check them out. I'll put a link to their website as well. Well, Preston, I know you're off tomorrow. You're a very busy guy these days, which is great, but I appreciate you taking a pit stop with Cars Yeah and me today. Thanks for being so generous with your time. Until you and I talk again, hopefully not in another 4 or 5 years. It'll be sooner than that. I'll see you down the road.
Thank you, Mark, and thanks for all the great work you do.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us on today's ride here at Cars Yeah. Drive on over to carsyeah.com to find show notes and inspiring automotive fun. Download your free copy of Filler Up, a fun book filled with gorgeous photographs of fuel filler fun, including quotes from more inspiring automotive enthusiasts. Download your copy today, and we'll see you next time on Cars Yeah.